The objective of the organization, We the World, is to facilitate cooperation on a global scale amongst groups and individuals dedicated to implementing solutions to the many challenges we face on the planet at this time.
Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit. My name is Rick Ulfik, and I am the founder of We the World at we.net and the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity. Today, I'm excited that we will be joined by Sande Hart and Joumana Rizk, who will be talking about women. For the full 11 Days Summit schedule, you can register for free by going to we.net. And then you can participate in the after panel public discussions and see replays of all the recordings. There you can also make a contribution to support We the World by going to we.net. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Sande Hart. She is an award-winning leader in the fields of women's empowerment and interfaith community building, and she is the president of the Women's Interfaith Global Organization, SARA, which stands for the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope, which was established in 2001. And Sande Hart will be joined by Joumana Rizk. Joumana Rizk is the founder of Peace Lights, an organization dedicated to promoting peace through an integrated approach that joins emotional education with social activism and performance art. And most recently, Joumana is a filmmaker. Welcome to the broadcast, Sande Hart and Joumana Rizk.
Thanks, Rick. It's so great to be here again for another 11 Days of Global Unity with Joumana, too.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful to be here.
Yes, it's great to see you, both of you. So let's start with Sande. How many are concerned about the growth of misogyny and violence against women, as well as the rollback of civil liberties like women's health freedom? On the other hand, we are seeing the rise of the feminine. Women are achieving new society-wide recognition as political leaders, business leaders, and peacemakers. Can you comment on these two tendencies? And please share about your work, for example, producing the first ever women's village at the recent Parliament of the World's Religions.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, well, thank you for this great question and this great, really critical, important topic, because we are really at a fascinating time in history on this planet that we will never see another moment like this or this or this. So we are really at a fascinating time where we don't know where we're going, but we know we're on our way. Old systems are breaking down across the board, across every critical issue that pretty much that humanity can face right now at alarming rates, at measurably alarming rates, I should say. Yet at the same time, like you said, we're seeing this uprising of something new, this new growth of power. And I would say it's not so much even about the gendered female, but the divine feminine, which is embodied in the divine feminine. And what I feel as women is our is our sacred task. This is what, this is who we are. It's not only our responsibility, but I think it's our privilege as women to stand in that power. And, something that you mentioned in terms of women's leadership, we have a lot of responsibility there, and we have to take a really hard look at how we women who are now, according to Indigenous prophecy, the staff has been passed to the feminine, also including the feminine, I believe, in the embodied and gendered male. Yet again, women holding that staff, figuratively and largely literally, because we do make up 86% of all the buying power and decision-making in the household. We hold that personal responsibility to show up in leadership and be really honest with ourselves. Are we truly, are we truly living that responsibility in our day-to-day actions? I'm speaking to myself. I'm constantly checking my integrity at the door, because it really does come down to not just the we collective that we, the world, is so beautifully, carrying as your vision, Rick, but also as the universal understanding of, this culture of collaboration and cooperation that's so necessary right now to move this needle. Let's turn that W upside down and look at the me in that. And that me in that is my personal responsibility. What am I contributing to the whole? And if I'm really not showing up when it's not convenient for me to be on my best behavior, for me not to be in my in the ideal role of a woman leader, which I fall short of often. Well, let me just honor myself. Not often, but enough for me to go, wow, you're a hypocrite. Slow your roll here, Sandy, because that's not what a woman leader does to another woman leader. So we really can check our integrity at the door as women, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. So I'm inviting all women to do that litmus test. Are we really in our integrity? How do we work well? And I do believe collaboration is the answer to the solution of the planet. Thich Nhat Hanh said the next guru is community, right? So that there's something so important in that understanding that we do need one another, but I also need to show up in that relationship in my highest power. I have to question assumptions about what I'm thinking. I have to pay attention to my behavior. Am I honoring my body? Am I honoring my sisters? Am I honoring my brothers? Am I buying products that are destructive to the planet, even though I'm over here saying, watch me in leadership, but don't watch me at the market, because I don't always make decisions that are good for the planet. No, I have to be fully, I have to really clean out my system here and reboot if I really truly want to live and realize a world that works for everybody, led by women. So for now, this is really what's important. So how can we step that up? And we can model that behavior. One of the ways that I hadn't the extreme privilege of doing was taking this committee of the Women's Task Force of the Parliaments of the World's Religions and thinking about what can we do to up level the presence of women at the Parliament of the World's Religions. And, as an interfaith activist, I have found over the last 22 years that we motivate through the heart. We motivate through those things that are highest in our deepest value systems. And this is where the power of religions comes in, right? This is where we can speak to what truly do we believe and what is our moral compass in that direction, which is what religion offers us, or tradition, or culture, even secular ethics. That it doesn't necessarily have to be the religious aspect to the word, but how do we show up in the world through our higher and our deeper value systems again? And so what a better way in a very quick 1 week event to model this, what's possible when women lead, and what happens when women converge, and what happens when women show up in the world, and how do women solve problems, and how do women, what's the shape of women out in the world, and at the Parliament of the World's Religions, and produce the Women's Village, this place that is a container, 1,300 square feet in one of the main foyers down at the Parliament, where we created our walls with women's woven voices tapestries. We had a water fountain that represented the critical importance of water, but how water is so important to the female body, as in to all of us. But we, as women, have the first oceans in our womb. We had a mother tree. We had programming in a sacred space room. We did maiden mother crone ceremonies and workshops, and we did crown making so we could literally crown our glory. We had places for women to converge. The most important thing, and this is where I'll stop because I want to be careful of my time, where the most important thing, and really the impetus for this space, was providing benches. Because I know, having been to the last many parliaments, that some of my juiciest, most important meetings and conversations and inspirations and mentors and new friends happened but when I took a load off on a bench in the hallway. So I needed a place. Women do that. We can, when we sit next to each other, before we know it, we found our common ground, we found our common passion, and then we start talking solutions, because this is what women do. So we had 5 velvet benches and a big, beautiful couch and a water fountain and an earth altar. And you can go on sarahforhope.org's website and see what we did there in pictures. But at any rate, how important it is for us to model in our behavior and provide models whenever we have that privilege, which we do every single day. And also pay attention to how we spend our dollars, because our dollar is our vote.
I hear that. Thank you, Sandy. That was wonderful. So let's hear from Joumana. Would you like to comment on anything Sandy said? And please share about the 4 waves of peace lights and anything else you are passionate about that relates to these issues. Thanks.
Wonderful. I think it's very exciting what Sandy did with this women's village, and bringing ritual and bringing the divine feminine into the conversation at the Parliament of World's Religion. Not too many years ago, that was not an open conversation. And the fact that now it is really shows how much progress we've made in this area, where, when God was male, in the traditions of the last few millenniums, when God was male, woman by definition could not be equal, because if the highest form is only male, then as a woman I am by definition less than. So this resurgence of the feminine divine is so crucial for our planet, but also for women's rights, and also for women's identity, and for the feminine. So I'm really excited to hear what Sandy was doing. So Peace Lights is very focused on the me and before the we, like Sandy was saying, turning the W of the we into the me, so that we can clean house inside and do our own inner work before, or as, not before, concurrently with being out in the world, because it's all related. The world is holographic, so whatever is in me is out there, and it's all interconnected. But and at Peace Lights we use something called the 4 waves of Peace Lights as a methodology, or as an approach, to do our own work and to connect with others. So the first wave is the wave of inner work, and we focus on the shadow. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we deny or repress, and it's a term coined by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Now, what's really interesting about the shadow is that I think the shadow is really up in our country right now and in the world. Like you were saying earlier, Rick, as we have made tremendous progress, both in terms of the feminine and women's rights, we are kind of slammed by a shadow wave of repression. We now have 22 states that have banned abortion. That's almost half the country. That's really, really intense. So if we look at that with the lens of shadow work, an interesting aspect is of the shadow is that when we step into light, the shadow becomes bigger and more visible. Just like, when we stepped into sunshine, our shadow is more defined and bigger. It's the same with our unconscious. So when we as a culture said, we are going to achieve this, we're going to achieve equal rights for women and men, we're going to honor the divine feminine with the divine masculine. What's happened is that the shadow of everything that is not that is the opposite of that, has risen with great force. And I believe that's what we're living right now. Scary times, very scary times. The polarization, the violence is terrifying to me, especially because I believe, coming from this work of shadow work, that you cannot bash the shadow out. You cannot fight it out. You cannot deny it. You cannot, slam it down. The only thing you can do is bring light to it and come into dialogue with it, integrate it, and find its gifts. Because going back to Carl Jung, my teacher of shadow work was Debbie Ford, and her favorite quote was a quote from Carl Jung: "The gold is in the dark." And Debbie would say, the gold is in the dark all the time. And it's hard when the dark is, something we're facing like we're facing now. It's hard to think that the gold is in the dark of the January 6th insurrection or the abortion bans. But I think that's what we have to find. We have to find what is the gold in this dark. Because it's when we find that we have a chance to then integrate and become whole again. And it scares me that we're fracturing rather than working towards wholeness or moving to wholeness. So not to say that this is easy, but it has been done before. It has been done in countries that have been in civil war and have managed to re-become a whole. And I think that's the task ahead. That's the task ahead for all of us to look at the other and stop projecting on them, stop projecting, demonizing them, or instead becoming intrigued and curious. Again, easier said than done because we're dealing with really big, deep issues here. But I believe that's our practice. So I'm not quite keeping track of time, Rick, but you will tell me.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more. That's fine.
Okay. So the second wave of peace lights is the wave of the feminine and masculine. And defining and articulating what is feminine and what is masculine in each of us, because all of us, men and women alike, have both energies inside us, and they can never really be separated. But some of us have a stronger masculine essence, some of us have a stronger feminine essence. And for millenniums, our culture has favored the masculine, and we even lost the knowing of the feminine. And now, as we were saying earlier, there is a resurgence of the feminine. So in terms of what we see out there today with women, running huge corporations and, being in positions of power everywhere, I think that's more women having learned to work in the masculine ways and succeed in the masculine ways than the rise of the feminine. Not always, but often. But I think valuing the feminine values, we still have a long way to go as a culture for that. And some of the feminine values are community, connectiveness, putting the whole before putting the relationship before the goal, before the product. There's a long way to go. We're completely run by a masculine culture still. The values that we aspire to in general are masculine, and we're making baby steps. We're working towards it. Certainly, this is your work, Rick. It's Sandy's work, and it's also my work in the world. So yeah, and so keeping on speaking about that's one of the reasons why I moved to film, because I think the more we speak about it, the more we can put it out there in the general culture, the more we can actually have a path to actualize it.
Yes. Did you want to go through the other parts of the four aspects for?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
go ahead.
So the third wave is the wave of creativity, for each of us to essentially follow our bliss, and tap into that and express it. And finally, the fourth wave is the wave of relationships, because it is in relationship that we can actualize. And that's what we're doing here. That's what your work has been dedicated to, Rick, all these years, is to create a network of relationships.
Exactly. And as you were talking, I was thinking it's really kind of one of the feminine aspects of what I'm doing and what others are doing regarding we, because it's that interconnection of relationship building and community, all of that. And for us, it's like that is the solution to humanity's challenges, because if people are just doing their own thing and not relating to each other, and that can be on a country level, right?
Right.
If they're not working together, then we're not going to be able to solve climate change and poverty and war and all those things. So, so thank you, Joumana.
Thank you.
So, why don't you join us, Sandy, and the three of us, let's, can we have a call to action? What are you each calling for, and how would each of you like people to take action? So let's start with Sandy.
Well, that's a loaded question, but I think we can boil it down to a couple of things that Joumana just said so beautifully. Thank you so much for that, Joumana, because in my notes, I've run out of room on this single page that I've been writing on after you've been talking. And I think it's really great to focus on that shadow that you talked about. I believe that when we recognize the shadow, when we are aware that we are witnessing shadow times or shadow personalities or shadow behaviors in others, we look at that as an avatar of our shadow side. And I've been recently looking at this work of Richard Schwartz on internal family systems, the internal family in ourselves, and looking at, these parts of ourselves that include, that really like shine a light on the shadow, as that shadow is really our protector. That shadow is really our partner. And when a shadow appears, it means there's something I need to be paying attention to in myself. And I'm going to bring everything down to the personal. My call to action is that we all take a good, loving look at who we are. What are those shadows? What is that shadow side trying to tell me about that I witness in another? And see them as my protector, as well as the breakdown of all these things. Two people I need to mention right here. Another call to action. Read Sacred Pleasure by Dr. Riane Eisler, a mutual friend that Rick and I share. And another mutual friend is, because what she talks about is explaining the slow drip over time, over millennium, that we can see the slow drip on society, where we have become adjusted. We accept so many things in our world right now. And as Dr. King says, it's time to get maladjusted right now. So that requires us waking up, and what we can wake up is to in the face of the shadow. There's that. And then another mutual friend that we share is Chief Phil Lane Jr., who taught me that anytime a system is dying, or anytime anything is dying, a relationship or anything is dying, it's a sign, it's an indicator that things are breaking through. It's nature. And a buck, when it's dying, isn't going to let you help it. A buck is going to bite, and it's going to kick, and it's going to do everything it can not to die. And I try to keep that bliss that you mentioned, that, and there were a number of references to Carl Jung, and with that also Joseph Campbell, seeing ourselves on the hero's journey right now, seeing ourselves as part of the story, of this mythological story we are living right now, and what is our personal role in it. So again, it's all just looking at that shadow, pulling it apart with curiosity that you mentioned, Joumana, and also recognizing where we're contributing to that separateness. I want to live in a world, and I invite us all, here's our call to action. Let's all live in a world where you are my beloved and my beloved is mine, which is a feeling I get when I'm on any bus or any city train. I fall in love with people, and it's something that you can condition ourselves into. So this is why I need to come back to New York and see you, Rick, because I want to get in a subway and fall in love some more. So I love you all. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've presented here.
Definitely. And thanks for bringing up Riane Eisler, who's on one of our panels, the Freedom panel. Which is very interesting. I mean, like the amazing people that we know, that can be on any of these panels, like you, Sandy, and
Riane, for
Joumana.
sure. Thank you.
Yes. So how about you, Joumana? What's your call
Yeah,
to action?
I totally second what Sandy said here. I'm really curious. I'm really curious what Riane Eisler and the two of you think about the film Barbie, because I thought that was such a fun way to articulate the whole, male-female power dynamic.
I liked it. I thought it. Did you see it, Sandy?
Oh boy, I did. And I think my favorite or the most memorable line is when Barbie doesn't wear heels, and the next sentence out of her mouth was, "Why would anyone wear these if they didn't have to?"
Perfect.
And it's like, there it is. Let's go back over time, read Sacred Pleasure. You'll see why women wear high heels. Wow. So that's all I'll say about that. So yes, I'm a total fan of
I remember the scene where she's like walking around and she's still as if she had high heels.
That's what, so to go back to the call to action, because I think we've been told that we need to wrap up soon. So one shadow integration technique that I can put out there for people if they're interested in trying. So when you see someone that triggers you terribly, like, I don't know, I mean, I'm going back to the abortion issue, right? With these, no abortion for no reason. But one way to diffuse the anger that arises for me, one way in me, for example, would be to say, what kind of person would do that? The shadow projection is not direct. So if I say what kind of person would do that, that brings it to a personal shadow of mine. So I might say, I bet for each of us it's different. What kind of person would do that? I might say, a fascist or a psychopath, but that's really different for everyone. Then I can take it in myself and say, wow, what is the part of me that is a fascist or a psychopath that I'm denying? And how can I make peace with that part? And when I do, the charge of the other is really diminished. It just flattens. And then there's the possibility of listening or dialogue or conversation. I think we need dialogue today. We need dialogue, not polarization. And so to clean up our projections, reclaim our projections, get flat on the triggers from the other side so that there is a chance to cross the divide is what we need, I believe. That's my call to action.
Good, thank you. So this has been an amazing discussion. And I want to thank both of you, Sande Hart and Joumana Rizk, and thank all of you for watching this and being part of 11 Days of Global Unity. You can just go to we.net to get involved. And don't forget to stick around for the public discussion right after this panel. And it's all about we, right? So let's go from being a me society to a we society, right? That's why we launched we.net. So much love to you all, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Rick and Sande.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joumana and Rick.